Hi guys. I love the film, by the way. I'm sure you've heard that a lot. But
People have only just started seeing it, so no, we can't hear enough, to be honest. We've only started getting any feedback, haven't we, Rose? It's been away for a long time.
No. It was one of those films I was enjoying so much that I actually had to pause and think, do you know what, I'm going to watch it later when it's a bit darker so I can get it, because I was watching it, I started at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon and thought, actually, this deserves a nighttime viewing. So more immersive that way. I'm going to begin with you, Rose. I mean, as characters go, Val is such a fantastic role for an actress to get her teeth stuck into, isn't it? I mean, there's so much going on internally in this character.
Yeah, it was, I'd never, when I remember first getting the audition through, reading the breakdown, and there was a few images that came through the email, which is really rare, and I had such a strong feeling like, wow, this world I'm so drawn to, the early 70s, the East End of London, a young nurse. On my mother's side, her mum was a nurse at Great Ormond Street in the 60s, and I've always been interested in ghost stories and the element of it addressing institutional abuse. Like it was kind of like a no-brainer. I really wanted the part, and I'm so grateful to Corinna for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah, and I don't mean to make you blush, Rose, but Corinna, I mean, it is a brilliant performance. So I just wanted to ask you what, when you sort of when you first saw Rose, what made you think, right, this is my Val, and how thrilled you were when you found her?
Well, it's kind of sounds corny but true, but it was a kind of instantaneous thing from watching the little tape that Rose did. That she managed to, just in the couple of lines that she had, just make Val feel warm and vulnerable and real. And because it's a really intense time frame and we don't really have very much time with our character before the whole thing kicks off, I thought that was just such a valuable thing to be able to bring to it. And that I kind of cared about her straight away, which I think is a rare and brilliant thing to be able to offer up. And then we had lots of conversations about how it might be, and the fact that it was probably going to be a very extreme shoot and very visceral and physical, and how would that work for her. And Rose just proved over and over that she was extremely capable of the challenge and that she wanted it for herself as well, which was great for me.
Yeah, and Corinna, I was going to ask too, I mean, because the film, I mean, in many ways, if in a very simplistic way, it's a fear of the dark and what goes bump in the night type thing. Was it quite fun creating something that feels so new and so unique, and yet at the same time was kind of grounded by a universal and very familiar horror trope?
Yeah, I mean, I love working in quite a kind of classic area, really. I love ghost stories and that whole world of the uncanny, but setting it in that time frame was really interesting, because we were just, Rose and I and all the HeyUGuys spent a lot of time thinking about what it was like then, doing research, really blown away by how kind of extreme the class divides and sexual politics divides were then. It felt more like the kind of 1950s, really. It was quite eye-opening, because it not really that long, but it felt like a completely different world. So it was quite an exciting place to step into.
Yeah. And Rose, what was this? I don't suppose this was shot chronologically, was it? I mean, if not, because I mean, it's such a palpable journey that your character goes on within these hospital walls. I just wondered if it was a challenge to always get into the right mindset. And I do appreciate that's obviously your job, but it felt particularly important in this story.
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, when I think back on filming, we shot September 19. I couldn't even be able to tell you the order. It was so, like, the word immersive really applies. It was so immersive, and we were just speaking about this before. The space informed my performance and how I felt, and how everybody felt, I think, on the shoot. We were shooting in an abandoned psychiatric hospital in Ilford, and Fran, our production designers, did such an amazing job to create this atmosphere. It did feel like you were stepping into the 70s. So even if we were shooting out of order, there was this maintained space of unease, which definitely helped.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of getting into the right mindset and feeling kind of scared, being in an abandoned psychiatric hospital must have made that quite an easy thing to achieve. Well,
yeah, just thinking.
Just the building had such a strong atmosphere, Rose, didn't it? It was like, I mean, that was something that I really wanted to try and catch, just because it brought so much. It was like a character in itself, and it fed a lot into the experience of making it, and probably into the experience of the performance. Rose, would you say?
absolutely, big time. I'd wander off between takes or when we had a break to eat, and kind of just feel, it sounds a bit strange, but like feel the walls and feel, you could feel, it was so, you could almost hear the people and the stories, and we were in a hospital and we were telling a story that was set in a hospital, so it definitely assisted me big time.
Yeah, Rose, I was going to ask too, because I interviewed an actor recently and I asked him, because he made a film that was on basically a single set, wore the same costume every day. And I asked what it was like, and he said he found it quite difficult to go to the same place every single day, wear the same thing every day. And it almost felt quite restrictive. I wondered if that was the case here, but if actually that was quite beneficial to you in this performance, because I guess the walls that you were kind of stuck in this movie were supposed to be quite claustrophobic.
Yeah, that's costume was a big help. I'd say the trickiest part for me was, I think, fear factor and Val's. It was really kind of feeling into the other characters helped so much, like when I was with Shakira. But to take it back to costume helped massively, because when Val's clean in her nurse, that's a big part of her personality, is her pride and her appearance, and she really wants to do well, and she really wants to look neat, and she really wants to feel set and okay because she's very anxious. So when she's all pristine, that helped big time. And then as the night goes on and as things start to descend, her outfit changes, and so I guess it was helpful, because even though it was the same costume, it got more and more.
In this case, we had like about 10 versions of the costume, so it was being the color was changing over the course of the night as our Val gets more kind of sucked into the situation and the institution. So there was quite a few little extra bits to work with like that, but the claustrophobia of the place was real, and I think it was probably quite helpful, wasn't it, ultimately? I mean, we were just kind of stuck in that headspace and playing it out.
And yeah, because Rose, you mentioned the anxieties of Val. I was going to ask you, Corinna. I mean, obviously, it's a period film, and at a time when, you know, women's fears were often being passed off as being hysteria, and then being subsequently silenced. But this is still a relevant theme today, isn't it? I mean, you only have to read the news at the moment to see that women's fears regarding sexual assault, or be it equal pay, are still being flippantly disregarded. So is that a way of bringing this story, you think, in some ways, into the modern kind of climate?
Absolutely. It was written by me as a modern woman now, and my interest in headspace. It was made by there was a lot of women on the crew as well as in the cast. It's something that we talked about a lot whilst going through the process, and it is a period film that is pretty much about today, really. I mean, it's not like any of the stuff that's in that story isn't relevant to anything that happens now, so yeah.
Yeah, because Corinna, I was going to ask too, I mean, obviously you do get in the horror genre, you get many women in front of the screen, but it's fair to say you don't get many female filmmakers working behind the lens in this genre. Why do you think that might be? Do you think why do you think this genre particularly feels quite inaccessible to female filmmakers?
They just haven't been financed. It's that simple. There's always been women interested in writing in this area and women with stories to tell in this medium, but it's only recently that they've been given the opportunity, I think. I mean, there has been lots of women through time that have broken through, but it just hasn't been fed or nurtured. And that's shifted recently, which is why you're seeing more stories emerge. And there's quite a few happening now, which is exciting.
Yeah, no, this and St. Maud's coming in the same year seems to be quite an exciting beginning of a movement. But I was wondering too, because I mean, many filmmakers who do make genre movies within the kind of horror genre, they tend to kind of remain there. I just wondered if you hope to try your hand, Corinna, in different genres across your career. If you have a few, you know, maybe there's a comedy in you one day.
I do actually love. I'm a massive film fan in general, so. I do have another horror project I'd love to pursue, but it's not the only area that I'm interested in. So yeah.
And Rose, I was going to ask, because obviously this Val is on a new job in this movie. I just wondered if you've ever had a difficult summer job before, perhaps not quite like the one we see in The Power, though I did do dishes once at a busy restaurant for a summer, and I think I'd rather have done a night shift in this hospital. But I just wondered if you could relate to any kind of like first days on a job that you always found quite stressful.
Oh my God, big time. I remember on my first day, I worked in a shop when I was a teenager, and being just so concerned about what to wear. And there's that scene at the beginning of the film, and she's smartening down her smock and making sure her hair's okay. And I remember feeling like that working in a shop. But And also any audition, I get that same anxiety. I'm like, oh, how do I put mascara on? Do I not? Is my hair okay? So yeah, I could relate to that.
Yeah, I think if you can cope with auditioning, you can cope with a night in a haunted hospital, probably.
Did you have any summer jobs, Corinna, of note that you always remember? That maybe shaped you?
Behind a bar in a really full-on nightclub where we had to wear little outfits with like really short skirts, and it was compulsory. And yeah, I'd definitely rather do Val's job.
I was going to ask you, because Corinna, obviously you've got a BAFTA nomination to your name. I just wondered what, because obviously, you know, they're coming up again soon, and BAFTAs, it's obviously a great accolade to have. I just wondered what it does for filmmakers to have that behind you, because obviously when you get it and you kind of, the news comes in, it must be so exciting, thinking, oh God, this could lead to so many places. Do you think it genuinely does? Do you think that in part helped you get to where you are today?
Yeah, I think it's different for different people depending on where they are in their journey. When I got mine, I was kind of completely outside of the industry, and it was really an early short film, and I'd been given this opportunity, so I didn't have an agent or anything. So it was big for me in that it gave me access to lots of people and got me an agent and kind of put me in a more real place. I don't think it's a golden ticket to getting your feature film off the ground, but if you're further down the line, I'm sure it helps as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask too about this film finding a home on Shudder, because Shudder is doing such great work with the kind of, in this genre particularly, and giving a platform to so many wonderful films like this. You must be quite pleased that it's kind of ended up in connection with the Shudder.
I think Shudder's doing some really interesting stuff at the moment. Yeah, and I'm really pleased to be in the company of some of the stuff I'm watching. I just watched Lucky and La Llorona, and I was quite blown away by both of those, and there's still lots to dig into. So yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah. And Rose, do you have a kind of inbuilt kind of sort of, are you a fan of the horror sort of genre? Is it something that you've kind of over the years watched and been sort of keen on, or is it something that's sort of developed now you've kind of been starring in one and are in the industry too?
When I was a teenager, I remember I loved horrors. I'd go to the cinema, and I remember going to the cinema and watching Paranormal Activity. I remember sort of late night or whatever, and I was in love with Kubrick when I was like 14, and I thought The Shining's the best thing ever. But then I took a break, I think, for a few years, and auditioning for this and then meeting with Corinna. We had quite a long time between the audition and shooting, and we had Corinna gave me a wonderful watch list, and we could go back and forth and talk about films, and particularly Japanese horrors and Korean films. Tale of Two Sisters was one I thought was really fantastic. So it has reintroduced me into a kind of specific fold of horror, which I really appreciate and continue to. Thanks.
You brought definitely quite a lot of awareness of the genre, though, I think, because like just little things like sense of timing and understanding what a scene was going to be doing in the story. I think that's so helpful. That was really helpful for me in the process. Because if you've never watched any, I think it's kind of in your bones when you've seen enough to get the point.
And it was once you kind of stop, once you start, you can't stop. That's what I found quite fun. And even now, like I hadn't seen The Eye, and I didn't want to watch the English language version. I watched that the other night. It was really good.
Yeah. So my final question, I was going to ask you, Rose, because I mean it's not quite a horror, this one, but Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, which I like just asking about. I just like saying the words Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris. It just rolls off the tongue. I love the look of that as well. How do you fit into that story? And you must be quite looking forward to that one coming out, because it looks like, I mean, just the period, again, as a period film, the kind of costumes and stuff look amazing in that.
Oh, that was so much fun, and it really doing the Power was so enjoyable for going into the 70s and listening to how people spoke in the 70s. And there's similarities in a weird way between the character in Mrs. Harris. She's an aspiring actress. It's set in the late 50s, and I come across the story plays around Mrs. Harris, played by the amazing Leslie Manville, and it was a book that's such a lovely read, and the script is so beautiful, and director Tony Fabian's amazing, and it was fun. It was my first kind of comedy role I've ever done, really. But she's working class, but kind of wants to come across, she puts on a show, and so from a similar background to Val, weirdly, but then a very, very, very different character. And I love researching the history of London in particular and people's stories. So it was a lot of fun, that film, but in a very different feel to this.
Yeah, yeah, just a bit. Well, thank you so much for your time today, guys, and best of luck with the release of this. I think it's a great little film. I can't wait for it to be out there so I can start getting all my mates to watch it as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey,